Interesting times we live in. We'll see. I am very concerned. I am very concerned that President Obama could be squandering his legacy. What little the Republicans have, I was going to say have allowed him to have, but really it wasn't. What little he was able during those 72 legislative days between the time Al Franken was sworn in and he got a filibuster-proof Senate and the time that Scott Brown was sworn in 72 legislative days later and he lost his filibuster-proof Senate. In those 72 days, President Obama accomplished a hell of a lot, right? And the Democrats are the largest middle-class tax cut in history. They saved Chrysler and General Motors. They stopped the hemorrhaging of 800,000 monthly jobs. They increased education spending. They cut student loan costs. They strengthened hate crimes. They passed the Affordable Care Act, which was huge. They expanded the Children's Health Insurance Plan. They expanded enforcement of child labor laws. There was Wall Street reform, Dodd-Frank, credit card reform. It was part of that. Predatory lending to soldiers was restricted. The troops started getting paid for stop-loss time, where Bush had been basically just robbing them. He stopped torture. He increased spending on the VA, equal pay for women, nuclear arms reduction. BP agreed to a $20 billion cleanup fund. The EPA was strengthened, which now the Koch brothers are, and all the other right-wingers are really working hard to undo. The FDA's powers were broadened. The 9/11 responders, they were dying like flies. They finally got funding for that. I mean, all this stuff happened in those 72 days. That legacy, much like Lyndon Johnson's legacy of what he accomplished with the Great Society, is about to be blown up by foreign policy blunders. And I get it. I mean, Obama's got to be feeling like, he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. But you look at these reports, like, for example, this piece about how where did it go? I got too much paper here in front of me. This piece about how the public in Syria, here it is, dispatched from Syria. This is written by John Quayle of Common Dreams. Months after the U.S. initiated military airstrikes in Syria with the stated goal of uprooting the Islamic State, new in-depth reporting from the ground in that country reveals that numerous forces once opposed to the group are now citing the U.S.-led bombing campaign as the reason to change their allegiances and join the very fighters they once opposed. Really? Well, of course, really. Just like, we thought that the people in Iraq would just love us and won't this be wonderful, and not everybody partied, but 25 people partied in that little square where they tore down the statue, enough to make it look like everybody was partying in the first weeks after the invasion of Iraq. But now, well, not even now, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, it was obvious that we were occupying their country. They reacted to it much the same way we reacted to the British occupation of North America back in the 1770s. To hell with this. I mean, we had snipers. So did they. You can't win militarily when your game plan. I mean, we did win. We did evict the governments of Afghanistan and Iraq. We kicked out the Taliban. Took us 3 weeks. We kicked out Saddam Hussein. Took us a week and a half, and another month or so to find him and kill him. But then what? What do you do then? And this is the point that Dick Cheney made back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when he said it would be crazy to go all the way to Baghdad. I mean, pieces would be flying in 16 different directions. Do you really want this? But these were these horrible mistakes that George W. Bush made. You got Dick Cheney? There's Dick Cheney back when he was in the Reagan administration speaking, or in the Bush administration, the first Bush administration, speaking truth about Iraq.
Once you got to Iraq and took it over and took down Saddam Hussein's government, then what are you going to put in its place? That's a very volatile part of the world, and if you take down the central government in Iraq, you can easily end up seeing pieces of Iraq fly off. Part of it the Syrians would like to have to the west. Part of eastern Iraq, the Iranians would like to claim, fought over for 8 years. In the north, you've got the Kurds, and if the Kurds spin loose and join with the Kurds in Turkey, then you threaten the territorial integrity of Turkey. It's a quagmire if you go that far and try to take over Iraq.
So, I mean, there you go. It's like, here we are, brought to you by the guy who you just heard from and his buddy George W. And so then Obama comes into office and inherits this mess, and he's got this debate going on in the administration about, do we just basically bail out and do everything we can with countries in the region, negotiate stuff, do it diplomatically the way that Medea Benjamin was brilliantly arguing we should, or do we drop more bombs? Well, there's a hell of a lot of money to be made dropping more bombs. And you got a lot of politicians who are taking a lot of money from those companies that make the bombs and make the planes and make the drones and make the, fill in the blanks. And then you've got the media, the news media. They're not interested in what the truth is or what the best policy is. They're interested in what's bloodiest, what's goriest, what's most interesting, because they're all driven by profits these days. And we end up with just a god-awful mess. There's no other way to describe it than it's a god-awful mess. It's amazing.